time. One more time, guys. Shitty angle. Oh, well. All right, we are live. We got a few people on here. We're going to hit the live button on Instagram.
Howdy.
Hello, folks. This is Coach Jerry here with Dr. Bruce Amons, PhD clinical psychology and PhD in philosophy from Duke University. So, all right. So we've got some expertise on the show today, or on the broadcast. So we're live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Instagram, how you doing? Sorry for the crappy angle here, but Instagram doesn't compare with, or isn't compatible with StreamYard, so we'll make do.
And Jerry and I are friendly, but we're not that friendly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have to sit this close. No judgment. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in now or later, whenever you can make it. Just as a reminder, my name is Coach Jerry Kuykendall. I am the owner and founder of Biohacking Truth, as well as Coach Jerry. And I spend my time and I gain much fulfillment in sharing what I've learned about the truth about health and getting the mind, body, soul complex integrated so that you can experience the best possible experience in life that you can in your given situation. So it's provided me much joy, much fulfillment in my life, and I don't see myself slowing down or stopping anytime soon. So that's what I do. Dr. Bruce, could you give a brief introduction for everybody?
Pretty similar for me. You know, I really enjoy the work I do, helping people kind of optimize their awareness of themselves and of others, and of all these basic signals that go on in us that we've been taught to ignore. We tend to have been told to focus on everybody and everything out in the world, and it really helps to be paying attention to what's going on in your own being. You know, it's pretty hard to get healthy if you're not doing that, because the signals are there to help you, but we all get distracted by all those flashy things out there. So, yeah,
it happens. It happens.
It really does.
We got a couple comments already, Dr. Bruce. Again, I apologize in advance for anyone that comments on here. Please still comment. But for some reason, if you don't download the StreamYard app, I can't see who's actually commenting. So here we got a Facebook user. Hey, guys. Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. If you want to put your name in the comments, I'd be happy to address you by name. I apologize for the impersonal recognition there. And then who do we got here? A couple of studs right there. Bruce, we found someone who doesn't know us personally. No, just kidding. Thank you very much. Appreciate the compliment and the kind words, the love and support. Over here on Instagram, Brian Lovelight says, real health is out there. Absolutely. Absolutely.
For everybody.
It is there. And you need not seek somebody with a certain degree or a certain coat or a certain level of authority. Not saying that doesn't help, but I'm saying it's not necessary. You just need to find the right fit for you. Am I right, Dr. Bruce?
Yeah, you know, it's a correlation whether your degree has anything to do with whether you can really be helpful to somebody or not.
Yeah, and I think, and that brought up actually the really the focus of today's live, and that is, it doesn't matter what degree your coach or your doctor does or doesn't have. It doesn't matter what level of authority they do or do not have. It's a matter of what are they doing with the information and how are they applying it? Are they only applying it to other people, or are they applying it to themselves? Not to bring up controversy, but hey, this is Coach Jerry. All we need to do is let's take a look at the recent, Twitter battle between Dr., and I even hate to use that word, but Dr. Peter Hotez and RFK Jr., right? So we've got one person who's the expert authority, but he's an admitted junk foodaholic. And he says, you have to take vaccines. Okay, well, I'm not going to argue that point, even though I very well could. And then you got the other guy who is obviously living the life. He's living the health lifestyle, and he's got something else to say. And he's got data, and he's got the same scientific data that Dr. Hotez has to access, but he has a different interpretation of it.
He has a very different way of looking at it, that unfortunately, to me as a scientist, looks more scientific than what HOTES does.
Yeah.
And I don't know what HOTES is like in a lab or something, but RFK does all the things you do as scientists, which you question everything.
Question
You're
everything.
constantly questioning. Nothing is written in stone ever.
Yeah. And that's what we're inviting you to do today.
Yeah.
Question everything. And we're going to share with you what we've been questioning within ourselves today. But along those lines, and so I'm just going to throw this in too, because I think it's relevant and I don't hear anybody talking about it, but we've got RFK Jr., who is being called a conspiracy theorist by everybody and anybody out there, which we got to look at that with a raised eyebrow, right? Because keep in mind who this man's family is. This man's family, his uncle was assassinated. And during the investigation of that assassination was when the term conspiracy theorist actually got coined by the CIA.
Who were the guys?
Yeah. This is Facebook. We can't just say anything and everything. There's no free speech here, Bruce. Come on. I'm sorry, Dr. Bruce. There's no free speech here, guys.
Yeah.
So Dr. Bruce didn't mean what he just said.
Yeah, I the words came out.
Yeah, it was taken out of context. It was taken out of context. So, but of all people to throw shade on for being a conspiracy theorist, a guy whose father and uncle were murdered, arguably, by people who know better. All right, so we're just going to leave that out there. So why did I bring that up? Because whatever your healing journey is, whatever it is that you need, all right, you possess the tools within you to source that. Now, if you find a doctor, if you find a coach, if you find a spiritual guide, I mean, whatever you find, if they don't resonate with you, it doesn't matter what their degrees are. It doesn't matter what their certifications are. It doesn't matter what their authority position is. All right, they aren't right for you. So what we want to share with you today is the fact that everybody goes through whatever it is that you're going through right now. And no matter how squared away you are, no matter how healthy you are, how integrated you are, I can pretty much bet that you're going through something. It might be minor, might be major, might be chronic, might be acute. But you're going through something, and you might be invited to feel alone. You might feel like I'm the only one that deals with this, or nobody deals with it quite like I do.
Or people are not going to be happy with me if I let them know this is going on.
Yeah, I'll be disappointing
somebody. Judge me somehow.
Yeah,
I'm going to disappoint them. You know, all those stories that everybody learns when they're 2 years old and are thinking in a really concrete way and do the best they can to understand what their parents are communicating, but really it's pretty primitive and it doesn't work when you're older. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and there's, you know, we could spend 3 hours chopping that up, and we'll spare you that because you didn't sign up for that. But just like what Dr. Bruce says, it really is, you know, primitive. And when you break it down, you know, if you're in the right headspace, when you do break it down and trace it back to like the origin story of your story, if you're in a good headspace, it's something you should be able to laugh at. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really comical because it really is silly.
And you'll be able to laugh at it because you'll actually be able to separate it from your true self. It'll be a thing and it's big and it does affect you hugely and has in the past, but it's not you. And the minute you get to where it's not you, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And I think that ties along with a big theme of what we do with our clients and our Dr. Bruce's patients is the whole personality aspect. I think just about everybody in the world is taking some sort of personality assessment through their employer, most likely. And from what I've seen, especially in the employment environment, the personality frame of reference is become underutilized, I suppose would be a good word for it. But it's really a fixed mindset, right? People are like, oh, I got my Myers-Briggs, I'm then, you know, INFJ or I forget what
I did some test online and it told me who I am.
Yeah, exactly. And or another one, you know, I'm a yellow or I'm a blue or something like that. But what does that tell you about you? What does that really tell you? That tells you what you're using to interface with the world. And I would even go so far as say, you know, personality is really what our ego is using to resist, reinforce, or ignore our soul's message, our true essential self, our ability to actualize ourselves, right? And if we get caught in the fact that, or in the belief that our personality is who we are, then we're actually proactively inhibiting ourselves from reaching our highest self. Because a personality, whatever our personality is, that's just kind of a snapshot of where we're at.
Sure,
and what we're using.
Limited amount of data.
Yeah, it's what we're using to interface with the world, right?
I mean, I know that you and I see people every day who we watch make massive change suddenly after some work at it, where they're just actually finding out that no, they don't have to be who they thought they were at all, because that was actually a mistaken idea.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
it was just kind of all they knew till they got some new ways of looking at things.
Yeah, and it's what we call their pattern. We get stuck in our pattern. So we're going to share with you part of our pattern today. So what I want to share with you is some of the struggles that we go through, and currently some of the things that have kept me in a state of where I have to trace back my triggers, and I have to trace back my anxiety and my these thoughts and narratives that I create about their situation I'm in, that inevitably trace back to some sort of identity or personality issue, or a lie to self.
And really early learning, just getting along interpersonally at a time when those rules were critical. We were being programmed in order to manage our interpersonal world and be safe, because when humans are interesting, they first 8, 10, 12 years of life, they really have to have someone helping keep them alive. They can't do it themselves. And so we're really wired to be working on trying to get along with whoever's looking after us. And that means we take in a lot of their crap.
Yeah.
They're best of, it's the best they could figure out, but it got handed down to them too. And we want to share this struggle each of us has had in different ways, really just to normalize. This is human stuff. We're just saying, yeah, we're the same as you, we're human. And in fact, we also believe that no matter which of these things we share with you, they're going to be things that will resonate, because these are almost universal human things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And survival strategies that we adopted based on false premises, basically.
Yep.
And we're being led and guided by people that are just doing their best. We call them parents. They're just doing their best.
They're human too.
I
like to call them, all of us, FHBs. That's fallible human beings.
That's right. And because they are human, they have their issues, and they're doing their very best, and they get transferred onto us, and it becomes our opportunity, right, to manifest our highest self. By helping to really get in touch with the program that we've received and see it for what it really is, not the story we've told behind it.
And we're going to kind of try and also, be sure that we do our best to talk about what are the kind of signals we get in our system when we figure something like this out, and it really does then free us up to be who we authentically are. Because there are things we feel and experience when we find some of this stuff that are clear signals that this is the way we need to go. This is like really who we are. And this is just like easier and makes sense and sort of ditches a bunch of massive story that we had.
Exactly. Storyline.
Yeah.
So I'll just get into sharing, guys. And if I use, nomenclature that isn't familiar to you, don't let that lose you. Really, this isn't about that. This is really just about you seeing that other people are vulnerable, and it doesn't matter how much time you immerse this is what we do. We realize you don't immerse yourself in this full time. This is what we do. We still come up with this stuff, and it still comes up in us. And there are ways to dismantle and integrate that part of yourself into your being. So I guess I'll just start it off, Bruce. So recently, the struggles that I've been navigating are centered around professional work, professional life, and namely, specifically, succinctly, the whole social media image, influencer versus coach, seeing what other influencers are doing and the information they're providing and how harmful it is and how much people are just loving their information. And this is something I had to really get real with. And so what came up for me is a feeling or a thought of can't do, right? And so I traced that back. It's like, do you really believe that? No, I don't. Is this something you identify with? Do you identify as someone who can't do or that's worthless? No, not at all. Well, what is it that you can't do? All right. So I have a belief that I can't project this image, this persona on social media that isn't me. No matter how much of the real me is not easily assimilated by the masses, no matter how much the real me can come across as maybe overly rigid or aggressive or in your face. I realize that about myself. So really the identity is in the belief is that I can't do that because that's not me. And I got real with that. And it's like, is that true? And as far as I know today, to this day, yes, that is true. And that is something that I can adopt as something that came from my heart. All right, well, why is it you feel that you can't do this, right? Well,
When you say can't do this, can't do what, Jerry? Just clarify that again.
Create content or a persona that is easily digested by the masses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like accessible to
Mhm.
people.
It's
Yeah.
acceptable,
Yeah,
easy
it
to
doesn't scare
assimilate,
people off.
right?
Makes sense to them.
And
Yeah.
the true message doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
So that's really the important part for me.
That is,
I would rather have 100 people watch a reel or a video or a piece of content, and 100 out of 100 get the real message than a false message, hoping that 10,000 people watch it, hoping 1,000 are interested, and those a few reach out and get the real truth eventually. I'm not willing to do that at this point in my life. So what I can't put out, I think, right, is this perfect content, right, that hits all the bases.
Yeah.
The perfect message.
Yeah.
And so
that fictional beast that's
yes,
somewhere
exactly,
out there in the ether.
Exactly. This thing that's watching you and judging you.
Yeah, we're still hunting.
Yeah. And so I got to trace that back, and I said, okay, well, is that true? Well, yeah, you can't create something that's perfect, because the dilemma that you are wrestling with right now, it's a true, real dynamic. There's the truth, and then there's what's popular. The truth isn't popular, and what's popular isn't true.
Yeah, they may overlap a little, but they are not synonymous.
Correct. And then there's a sub-layer here, the psychographic of the audience that I'm projecting to. And that is that the audience out there on social media now is really, really dug into this belief that they are going to somehow find their answer with reels, podcasts, and memes. It's not going to happen.
You mean that's not true?
And the reason is because all you're getting there is one of concept or context. And there's a number of ways you can word this and term this, but the formula that I've coined with my clients and in my work is we've got conceptualization, contextualization, and actualization. You need to go through all phases, and you need to dabble in and out, and you need to spend time being comfortable and uncomfortable in each one of those phases. You can't possibly put it together with podcasts, reels, and memes.
So name those again, Jerry, just to...
Conceptualization. So you got the concept.
Yeah.
Contextualization. Here's the concept. Here's what it looks like in real life. Actualization is running the cone drills, running the exercises, taking notes, coming back to the drawing board, and redoing the experiment. That's where the true growth happens. That's where the true change happens. And that's why we see rapid change in the people we work with. But that's not what's out there. So part of me is like, has some animosity towards those influencers, because I don't believe for 1 second that those influencers don't know exactly what they're doing. And that is based on my experience with social media and the business coaching that's out there. So this is a little inside baseball, like,
yeah, so like what really is going on.
What really is going on. So succinctly, if any of you are familiar with the Enneagram, you'll get this. If not, I'll do my best to explain as I go. But what we've got out in social media is a type 3 world out there. And in the Enneagram, the type 3 is what's called the motivator. But if you think about what a type 3 is when not healthy, is imagine the most beautiful wrapped Christmas gift you've ever had, or birthday gift, or whatever you celebrate. The ribbon is shiny, the paper is beautiful, the box is perfect, the tape is perfect.
Can't keep your hands off.
That's the first present you want to open.
Yeah.
But when you open it, there's nothing inside. That's the type 3 when not healthy. It's the facade, it's the image conscious, it's the when really unhealthy, they get in the sociopathic end of the spectrum. They get completely
becomes very manipulative.
Yeah, they become completely engrossed in deception.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a type 3 world out there. We've got type 3 business coaches telling people, for instance,
they're fairy tale makers.
For instance, any of you guys that have your own business that are hustling, that are an entrepreneur, that has hired a business coach, how many people have approached you about business coaching, and how many of them have talked about your content, your marketing, your branding, your scalability of your business? All of them, right? And they all say they do it better than anyone else. And they've got more success stories. They made more $25,000 a month, $25K a month businesses than anyone else, right? How many of them actually talk about how to coach people? I've spent over $30,000 on business coaching. I've never had anybody tell me how to coach people.
Yeah. So really a wrong focus.
Yeah. And I feel bad for those guys. I mean, they cashed my check, but they didn't get anywhere with me as far as convincing me to create this online persona. So we've got that. It's like, I believe I can't make this perfect content. It's like, oh, that is true. But the story that I was wrapped up in, the non-truth, was that I can't make perfect content. And the perfect that I was associating to that wasn't my.
Yeah, you were actually still buying into their stuff a little, right? So you weren't going to be perfect unless you just bit the bullet and did this thing.
Yeah,
really goes against
these
who
captions are off by a quarter second. Oh, this frame is bad. You know, this you didn't look in the camera when you said, like, these are the things that are coming up, and I was like, oh, it really had nothing to do with the actual dynamic of wanting to share the truth, wanting to be digestible enough.
I think of a funny one,
but not being fake.
Along that line, you think about, if you think about how all these politicians these days look on video, they've been told by a handful of experts, you always have to have your hands in the frame and you have to be doing this with them. And if you watch them, it just looks so weird. You're going, what is he doing with his hands?
Yeah.
It'd be like me just having this conversation with, but I'm going like this with my hands. And I'm like, there's absolutely no purpose to that. But some quote expert told him to do that.
Yeah, they actually probably bought a $37 video off of Instagram. Just saying. That was made by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Type 3 world.
Who doesn't even have hands.
Type 3 world, right? But so this all boiled down, and this is where the rubber meets the road, at least in my practice with my clients, when I help them figure out why they can't eat real food, why they can't get to the gym, why they believe that. And it all, usually boils down to their false core. And my false core is being vulnerable, out of control, weak, powerless. So all this, like, I could chase these down. I could chase the perfection thing down. I could do the worthless can't do. I could trace that down. But really, it's making me feel vulnerable and powerless. Because I feel, of course, anybody that has a service that they offer, if they're really doing it from their heart and soul, they feel like they're offering a really good service. I'm no different. I feel like this service that I offer is freaking amazing. There's nothing like it. There's no one that can touch this, and the results and the transformations that I've been fortunate enough to get to watch unfold. Like, I just want to share that with the whole world, because I don't think a lot of people are getting this stuff. Right. And so it's like, I feel powerless to get that out. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's really what I'm feeling. That's really what I'm believing.
Yeah, that's really a story you're running. That's actually working always as a defense against whatever you're actually feeling about that issue.
Yeah.
So about the guys who do this, like almost like they're just prostituting themselves to whatever works, but also about the whole effort of having to sort of learn all these things and solve all these old issues for yourself and all of that. But it's stories, and we tend to call them feelings. And it's really worth doing what Jerry was just doing and actually starting to drill down to what recognizing that and calling that what it is, which is a story, a defensive story, and looking at the actual feeling under that, which is always important to know, because that's the driver of this issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beauty of the false core, is like, really, for me, it doesn't get past vulnerable and powerless. It's like, what's the worst part about can't do? Oh, it renders me powerless. What's the worst part about not being able to launch because it's not perfect?
But here's the interesting piece. You said you were sort of told or had this understanding from some people that you're too pushy or too powerful in their presence, or kind of, go get them and everything. And some people are going to feel that way. Some people are like me are going to really like that about you. But in any case, there's a story there that's problematic. So we can use defenses like emptying ourselves of our power, and then we're, quote, powerless. But we've actually had this active defensive process where we've emptied this power from ourselves that we all have, rather than being able to go, yeah, I'm powerful enough to do what I want to do here.
Yeah, and that's what I would refer to as being scared of our superpower.
Right. That's a great.
Right. And that's what our false core does to us. It's the thing that drives us. It's our core motive. It's the thing that really just sparks anything worth talking about, like as far as energetically in us. Yet when we overexpress it, because we're out of touch, it causes us problems, so we want to diffuse it or get rid of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When it's really, no, that's your superpower. And to some level, like the way your superpower affects other people, that's just their shit.
And to a large extent, if not universally, whatever that is probably what everyone else is needing too.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you do it and they're not, they're going to complain about what you're doing, because it wakes them up inside just enough to start feeling things and getting anxious about how they know that would be useful to them, but they're not doing it.
Right. Yeah. That's the, when you shine light on the shadow never likes it.
The shadow never likes bright lights.
The shadow does not like bright lights. And so the more resistance there is, that shows how much more progress needs to happen before they're ready to shine light on those shadows. So before, I would interpret that as, you're just too much. You're overbearing. You need to watch what you say. And that still is all true. But at some point it's like, look, I was in a conversation with Sonny yesterday. I'm not going to, go into it, but it boiled down to, I had to trace this and be like, all right, you can just shut up and just let him keep lying to himself and lying to you. It's no harm. You're not going to believe any of it. Or you might be the only person that's going to tell this person the truth between now and the time he dies. And this person had an illness that they were just totally wrapped up in the death sentence from the doctor and the label and the diagnosis and all that. So they were totally into the plan of just fizzling away and dying. So I'm not going to take that lightly. So I just went into my type 8 and it just gave him the truth. And he took it well, and it went well. So anyway, that's kind of one of the examples of what I'm currently unpacking, and really the next level of understanding in that really makes the anxiety go away, that makes the sleep happen, that makes like these subconscious underliers that are symptomatic, even though you don't know it, go away, is to realize that although I believe that renders me vulnerable and powerless, really that shows me that I have an opportunity to figure this out. And once I do, I will be that much more impactful in getting the thing out that I am so excited to get out to as many people as possible. So that's the truth.
Yeah. And when I hear things from the people I work with, or from my own mind, about a judgment of any kind, a labeling of any kind, it's always healthy to challenge those, because no human is so simple that you can come up with a word like powerless and that actually describes who they are. The last word I think of around you, Jerry, is powerless.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating that this is a state our nervous system gets in, where we have been handed a label or come up with a label like that somehow, and we just spend all our time staring at it, and we get stuck because it's not really getting at all this complexity of what's going on in terms of feelings and how some of those generate a lot of anxiety and all of that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up the topic you did, because that resonates with me from kind of my perspective, which is that I was thinking about what you thought we might do today, and along those lines, and the thing that was really coming up for me recently was the idea of procrastination, and what is it? Because I've never read a satisfying account in journals or in books or on anybody's talks or anything describing what procrastination really is and what to do about it. I just find them lacking all the time. And so to me, that just means they're pointing at something we're all capable of and sort of know in some way, in our own way, in our lives, but it's not really clear enough what the heck they're talking about.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I've got this little situation with a couple people where procrastination is actually a huge deal for them. And we've been unpacking procrastination pretty heavily. And we've seen a lot of progress in tracing back the identity structure to the task at hand. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, like I've been like fit to be tied over like just opening my laptop to do some work. Mm-hmm. Little inside baseball. I do not like tech. I do not like electronics. I do not like engaging in social media. I think it's all fake. It's all the matrix. It's all bullshit. It's to keep us distracted and to keep us away from our true essential self. So there's that. But whenever I would procrastinate, like there was this visceral, like almost like inability to like type on the keyboard. And I found that really it's just like I don't identify as somebody who can make stuff happen on the laptop. And it's just like, when's the last time that you just got punched in the face with that? Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget is one of these business coaches, I paid him like $15,000 and I worked really hard on this project and I submitted it to him and he just looks at it and he's like, do you enjoy doing this stuff? And I was like, yeah, it's a nice creative release. I like it. And I liked it then. And he looks at me and goes, Jared, some people are just good at some things and some people aren't good at some things. And when it comes to creating, you should just hire somebody else. And I was like, wow.
He didn't say like me.
Right. So I adopted his identity that he gave me. You can't create. Holy crap. Well, that ties into the other stuff. There's a reason why the perfect word like comes in when I'm sourcing my shit. And that has to do with my grandmother and blah, blah, blah. So really like, this is how like easy it is to like really fall into these traps, So what else have you been unpacking, Bruce, besides besides procrastination, or did you stumble across anything along those lines?
Well, looking at procrastination and how I have a tendency to do that, I was recalling a paper that got handed to me by a director of a health service I worked in at a university, and it was interesting because the guy said everybody does, and in his experience working with students, the brighter the student, the more they procrastinated. And he said, because they're smart enough, they can wait till the last minute and keep doing all the things they want to do, like you were talking about, or that they're good at or whatever, and then they can get it done. And I thought, that's a somewhat satisfying description of what goes on, but why? I would always think about how getting some big paper to do that really is going to take a lot of time and everything, that I'd put it off till the last week or two of the semester and then go to town on it. But it was painful because I was worried about it the whole time. And it's like, what is up with it?
Yeah. And who am I doing this for? Am I doing this for me?
Who am I doing it for? who am I worried about as a judge of this thing? And what's my idea about the bar that's set for getting getting nice feedback as opposed to you failed or you're defective or something, whatever that is.
Yeah. So procrastinating is a good way to delay rejection.
It is. You're not feeling incompetent. Anything to be judged, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite work that way inside of us because we're actually judging ourselves for not creating. And so we're like going to get it from both.
Well, are we really judging ourselves or is someone else judging us?
It's both. See, we're worried about them judging what we do when we produce. And we think, well, I just won't produce. But then we judge ourselves for not producing.
Yeah.
So we're caught in this thing. And then another piece sort of fell into place with me. Again, like Jerry talking about his grandmother. I mean, looking at my family's history, I've done a lot of work around that. And because I come from a really big, complex family that's just got all kinds of interesting stories about things. They tend to be really intellectual about stuff and freak out when I talk about feelings with them. But I realized in this way
it's type 5 stuff.
Yeah. I realized it very much is. When this came to me, I had one of those signals I was talking about earlier. That's one of the ones we get where we go, oh, this I need to pay attention to, because it came to me and it went click into everything I'd been looking at it with regard to not getting something done that I really needed to get done. And it was perfectionism, that my family expected people to like know things before they'd ever even read them or run across them. We were just supposed to be like these super brains who just know all this shit. And it's like crazy. Nobody can do that. And then when we performed, we were supposed to perform at the absolute highest level. So there's nobody who could sort of beat us out or get in our way or anything. Mm-hmm. And that was all about.
There's no way you could be judged that way.
Right.
If you're perfect, you can't be judged.
And I got to thinking about how my dad had a history where, he's gone now, but he had a history where his dad just ran off on him, he and his mom when he was 3. And so his mom was teaching at a big college in Colorado, and she couldn't do anything with him except bring him to the classroom and sit him in the back. So think about the message to a 3 or 4 year old.
There's something wrong with you.
Well, more importantly, the only thing that really matters to my mom and other people is studying and intellectual stuff and handling books and, all this stuff my dad actually really got super good at. But he never really sort of sorted out that business. So I think I got all this idea that that you were never performing well enough and that someone was going to judge you.
You're never
right?
enough. Yeah. There's always something
And
wrong.
so I really saw how, by God, when that's what you're expecting, no matter what product you create, now you don't want to create, because that's going to be really painful when someone tells you it's no good.
Yeah. And particularly if someone has a false core of I am imperfect, or I am incompetent.
Yeah.
That's,
or I can never work hard enough to be competent.
It's never going to be enough. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the actual truth is, guys. When you're stuck in that trance, when you're believing that, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It always is. The perfectionist, the perfectionist dilemma is that they don't realize that there's always going to be something wrong.
Always.
So long as you are willing to label things as right and wrong, you will always find something to label as wrong.
Yes.
And it's, as far as my work in this thus far in the personality realm, the perfectionist, guys, if you are a perfectionist, open your mind, open your heart. Okay.
Especially
you are not the arbiter of what's right and wrong. You are not the arbiter of what's good and what's bad.
I think I told you a while back, and my line I love to use with people, because it's really powerful, and it's humorous, so they can hear it. That means exactly that. As I tell them, look, you're just not that powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
mm-hmm.
And just not.
And so if you believe that you are the arbiter and you are the judge, jury, executioner on what is right and wrong, newsflash, you're going to be waiting a long time for 8 billion people to change to be just like the way you want them to be.
Exactly.
Okay. And what's that cost the perfectionist? They won't show up until it's all perfect.
Yeah.
They won't show up. And so if you're a perfectionist and you are stuck, take a look at that.
Because what are you going to do when you're sure that everyone's out there is going to judge you whether you did it or not?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to avoid other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to hole up. And then you're going to develop lots of other habits that are really problematic.
Mm-hmm. And you probably think it's not okay to be angry.
Yeah.
Or emotional, or because
yeah.
that's not what good people do. So really keep that in mind. You'll be dealing with repression issues. You'll be dealing with autoimmunity, constipation, hemorrhoids.
Yep. You're turning that anger inward, and it's going to attack you at your weakest points. And for different people, those are different places in the body and mind, but everyone will have weak points, and that's where it's going to end up.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
What else you've been unpacking, Bruce? Or is that the big thing?
That was a big thing.
Yeah.
Let me take a peek at my list here, Jerry. It's easy for me to make a list of that stuff. I know. It was something that comes up in a therapy or a coaching world all the time, which is unconsciously overcommitting and overworking with someone that's shown up that says they want to work with you, where you end up at some point where you're doing all the work and they're not, and they're not getting better, and you're not figuring out why. One of my mentors used to watch tape of therapy sessions with us, and he'd stop the tape and go, well, who's doing all the work here? And we just do a head slap, me. And we'd show it some more, and he'd go, well, who's having all these wonderful insights? And another face slap, me. He goes, who needs to work and who needs to have those insights? So then the question is sort of, what's this shadow behind that? Mm-hmm. Right? What would your take be on that be?
Let's see here.
It's something about needing to be powerful.
I was going to say there's something about needing to be influential over the outcome of that particular relationship.
Yeah.
And to feel like you're worthy or providing worth, or
and in
power.
General, just being really powerful, probably more powerful than the person you're dealing with, in order to feel safe.
Mm-hmm. So that would be the type 8 within us.
Because in a way, when that happens in any relationship, you're sort of, one of the things that's happening is you're not trusting the other person to do the work or to step up or to engage with you. And you're really, in a way, trying to force that to be true.
Well, yeah. And there's a part of you probably that doesn't believe that they are capable of doing it without you.
And I can tell you, this studying I was doing when this came up with my mentor was in a group of 10 people from around the world who on average probably had 25 to 30 years of experience in practically every kind of psychotherapy and medicine there was. These were really, really capable people. And every one of us would just do the face palm going, okay, that's me.
Yeah.
Because these are real things for all of us.
Well, there's one thing that Paul Chek does a great job of getting getting home to us is, like we were talking before, you always have a client. You should be working on yourself at all times, always staying ahead of your
That's
clients.
really a nice way to put it.
You
because
always
it's so
have a client.
true.
It's yourself.
Yeah.
And
it's a crazy one. He'll be as challenging as anyone you ever try to work with. So if you can work with yourself, you can work with everybody. Right?
All the bullshit will come up.
Yeah.
But also he has another great saying where it's like, we're both responsible for 100% of our 50%. And so if someone's only giving you 50% of their 50%, right, but you're giving 100, someone's got to make up that ground.
Yeah.
And it can never be the person that's already giving 100% of their 50%.
And this other person's got a lot of the kinds of schemas, habit patterns like we're talking about here, just like we do. So if they're kind of withholding and getting you to do the work, it's a way they hide from doing the work and worrying about that they'll do it and then somehow fail or be judged for it.
Yeah.
So those are all the things that need to be surfaced in all of us.
Yeah. Man, I'm tempted, but we probably shouldn't go into like age regressions and inner child right now. But
it's
that is something
we will though.
Yeah, we will.
This is really important.
So and then so I would also like to just recommend, if you guys are interested in this type of stuff, and you want stuff that's like digestible for the lay person, and you don't necessarily have to be like a therapist or anything to read their work and understand. Dr. Stephen Walensky is a huge influence on myself, particularly his work on the false core and how we can trade, like Bruce was talking about, that powerless feeling. One therapist might be like, a type 8 where power is huge for them, and that might be where they land, but someone else might feel powerless, and that makes them think that they can't do or believe that they can't do, which matches their own identity that they formed about themselves when they were that big.
And we've talked in the past how that means these two people, as different as they look, share the same schema about power.
Yeah.
They've accommodated it in a different way. So the way they look and the way they handle this issue with their defenses looks opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it could be power, the need for power, the desire to exercise your power on one person might be a sign of them going towards their integrative path, where someone else, it might be them going towards a regressive, disintegrated path, right? It's a trajectory. It might manifest itself in ineffective coaching or counseling.
Mm-hmm.
It might manifest, but one, it's like, okay, this is a step you going in the right direction. This is a sign that and another person might be a sign you're going in the wrong direction. So that's why it's really important, guys, for you to unpack this stuff and to really spend the time writing the stuff down on paper, asking yourself, where's this coming from? What part of my beliefs or my identity or my feeling structure is really contributing to this?
Mm-hmm.
And you absolutely can.
Yeah.
What else you got, Dr. Bruce?
Let's see what else I got here.
I'll cruise for any questions here. Anybody's got any questions? Oh, we got 3 black hearts. I'm taking that as good. We love you too, whoever that is.
Those are really the main things.
Okay.
And for me, I mean, probably for you too, I see how all these are just interconnected with every kind of issue like this that comes
Mm-hmm.
up. They're all interrelated, and the way we've learned to deal with it, to navigate our life, both internally and interpersonally. So intrapersonally and interpersonally, is all this patterned stuff about when we get a certain kind of stimulus, like a particular person talking to us. Our history jumps up and we get anxious about we get feelings toward them that are often mixed and complex. There'll be at least one of those that we're really frightened of showing because it got us in trouble as a kid, or at least we thought we understood that. And so we're really anxious, and it'll pull for everything we've ever learned to cope with that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the really underlying stuff that we tend to go to the most is, as you said, that very age regressed childlike stuff when it first happened to us, because that was the prime experience. That was when we were kind of a blank slate getting written on. So it became this first thing written, this foundational piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our navigational blueprint, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes we just got to look at the map and say, I don't want to head that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's not where
or say, who the hell wrote this map?
Yeah, who wrote this map? I don't even recognize it.
Yeah, I don't even know.
It's not even in my language, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, it looks like we're all caught up. Oh, here we go. Brian's got a question here. Brian on Instagram says, could the pain that comes from procrastination be a way for one to create a level of discomfort to generate action? I often find it more difficult to change things in my life when things are pretty okay. Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's definitely a super, and I'll let Dr. Bruce chime in too on his expertise, but I would say that's a good superficial explanation, but I would definitely not let it go at that. I would keep asking questions.
Yeah, keep asking why that's the case.
Yeah,
if it is.
Yeah, and I think
and why would we end up? What are we not understanding underneath that would lead us to a solution that involves creating pain for ourselves in order to do what we need to do?
Yeah, exactly. And
because that's not a normal thing for animals to do. Animals don't usually seek pain unless they have a history where there's a lot of other stuff going on that's actually driving it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, Brian, to answer your question, I would say, yeah, that would be a great starting point.
Yeah.
We need to trace it back, though, into like all sorts of things. But, you can come at it from all sorts of different angles. But one, like, curiously, this is probably how I would just, like, off the top of my head, be curious to know about this particular situation is have you always done this? And is this just the way it's worked out for you? It's just a habit pattern?
And like, what's your earliest memory of this?
Yeah. And is it costing you anything?
Yeah.
What's
the price?
Yeah. And if it's not, then why worry about it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what is the task at hand that you're trying to get into? Right. Because motivation is a huge thing. We're really talking about being motivated to do the task. Right. So motivation is a huge thing. So what is motivating you in this task? Now, I'm motivating most people in that situation. I mean, you're talking about students, assignments, deadlines, or in the professional environment. What is motivating you to do this task? Well, if I don't do the assignment, if I don't do the essay, I won't get a good grade. I won't get a grade at all. All right. Or if I don't do this, I'm going to get fired. Right. Or maybe you're studying to be a doctor and you have no interest in being a doctor, but somebody told you need to be a doctor. Right. So it's like, why am I doing this? Why am I really doing this? Does that match how I identify? What are my beliefs tied around that? And what am I scared of? So those are some questions that I would ask.
Yeah, those are great questions.
Yeah. But I would say if it works for you, Brian, no harm, no foul until it presents itself into a different, more objective
or
disruption.
It just continues as a question.
Chronic.
If it's a chronic question, it keeps coming up, then yeah, there's definitely something worth mining right
now. Yeah. So is it chronic or is it acute?
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, define schema. Dr. Bruce could absolutely define schema. Dr. Bruce, would you do that for us?
Yeah, it's actually, the original term was used by Jeffrey Young. He's a psychologist back east. He studied personality really or habit patterns from the standpoint of sort of a cognitive approach, but he more and more got more general with it. And he basically made a bunch of questions about how people behave in different interpersonal situations and made this big questionnaire, and he kept adding questions and tuning them. And he developed this big schema questionnaire where he then analyzed it to see if there were underlying like dimensions in it. And it always came up with 15 or 18, no matter who he gave it to as a bunch. And over like
30, about right.
30 years. Yeah. And they are things like abandonment, self-efficacy, a bunch of things that just as soon as you see the list, they'll resonate for you. But what he's really talking about is habit patterns, whole groups of behaviors we do together in a structure that help us cope with some kind of interpersonal interaction. So they're like these, by the time we're adults, they're these implicit rules we have. They're unconscious. We practice them so much, but they're automatic. They're these reactive things we don't really have choice in, where we get confronted with a partner who's like saying, I don't think this relationship is working. Well, there's lots of things that you could do there if you weren't too anxious about that. But typically it makes people anxious because they have feelings. They're maybe angry at the person, or they're incredibly grief-stricken because it touched on something and they can't handle that feeling, get anxious. They then do these old patterns to try to cope with it. And because they're old and concrete and rigid, they're usually fairly destructive and not that helpful. Mm-hmm. But we just keep doing them and we begin to realize them. So he would really say schemas are these habit patterns that we have that we can learn to recognize. I think if you Google schemas, or schema theory or something like along those lines, you'll find probably a Wikipedia account of that'll make a lot of sense to you, I think, when you look at it.
Yeah.
One thing about his theory is it's like you read it and it's just like almost common sense, which most of the best theories do come off that way. One of my perception prof at Duke told us one time something I've never forgotten. He said, well, basically anything you come up with as a finding in science, you'll know it's good if your grandmother already knew it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just love that. Get off your high horse.
Yeah.
These are like pretty obvious a lot of times.
The truth is the truth, and it resonates. Yeah. And bullshit resonates
and
too.
Smart people know the truth through whatever means they got there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. All right. Brian, great answer. Thank you, Dr. Bruce. Brian, I hope that answered your question. What's got you so much?
Yeah, I hope I didn't put you to sleep with that. But.
Similar to maladaptive physiological engram.
That's certainly.
How would you compare it?
Yeah, that's certainly a piece of it. Those are certainly overlapping a ton.
Yeah.
And they are maladaptive most of the time, except the reason we have trouble changing them is they actually at some point saved our ass. They were survival mechanisms as we understood them. And so they are as deep as it gets. And I like to tell people, it's like when you're trying to change these and you're looking at them, it's like you walked in a dark closet and the shelves are full of boxes that look kind of scary. And on them, there's a label on every one of them that says survival. Mm-hmm. Are you going to just grab those and throw them out?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to. It's going to take some real work unpacking that those labels are bullshit.
Yeah. And what we'll do is we will look in every other box. We'll know that's the box we need, but we're going to look in every other box just in case something else works out.
Or go, wrong closet. I got to find a different one.
Yeah. So we're going to rewind back about 10 minutes. All right. When I talked about as a perfectionist, right? And that's just one schema, right? Or one subset of the schema, right? But just since we've already used the example, we're going to use it again. And this is how the survival strategy works. And I actually had a really awesome, fiery meeting yesterday with a type 1 perfectionist. And we've been meeting for several months, and she's had great results and everything, but she's stuck on this one thing that everybody on the planet, not really, but everybody knows, like, this is what you need to do. You need to go have this talk with this person because they're running your life unconsciously. And she knows it, and she knows that everything can be perfect. And she's just like, why can't I not get all just worked up over this? And I just looked at her, I was like, you tell me. And she's like, I know. It's that box that Dr. Bruce is talking about. It's that one box.
And here's the thing about moving those boxes to look in them is, even according to all the neurologists these days, if you were to ask any of the modern day neurologists, how much of our behavior is actually driven consciously? They'll say 1 to 5%, which means that box is sitting on a shelf, but it's attached to a box that is 5 times heavier and bigger and full of nastier stuff. So it's really hard to get at this stuff. And you have to have been balancing this with this desire that's coming up in you, these desires in you that say, something's wrong and I want to fix it. Yeah.
It's your higher self knocking.
Yeah, it is. And your higher self will just kind of go whisper to you. And then if you ignore that, it'll go. If you ignore that, then you get the 2x4 to the back of the head.
And the whole time the ego's like, tell him to shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go have some fun.
Yeah. And it takes whatever it takes, but it's a little gentler on you if you do the work.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, Brian, thank you for your question. We appreciate that. Very good question. Very good question.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's anything else. All right, guys. I think that's all we got. I appreciate you for tuning in now or later. If you have any questions about this, if you tune in later, please put it in the comments. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in learning more about this, follow me. Leave a comment down below. You can reach out to me anytime on DM. You can reach out to me direct, 406-241-3763. Dr. Bruce, is there a good way to get a hold of you? Is there a good website that people can find?
You can look at adepttherapies.com.
Okay.
It's just a basic website, but it has all my contact info on it. You can also look at goodtherapy.org and search 59801 for my zip, and you'll find a big, long story about who I am and what I do, because those guys do a real good job of getting that stuff from you to put on the website for ads.
Cool. Yeah, and if you guys are in the Missoula area, this is where we're located. So if you're looking for some in-person guidance, look us up.
Yeah. And then keep an eye out for Jerry's new app too.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
We're not gonna just in the
I
launch
know,
phase
I
yet, right?
know, I know.
So, all right, guys, appreciate everything. And as always, peace, much love, and live well. Take care.